What's up, guys? Dr. Teddy Wilsey here. We're back with another recovery workout, and our focus today is going to be on hip strengthening. Now, we all know that the hips play a vital role in both our low back and knee health. One of the things we see oftentimes is the hips connect the knee to the rest of the body. So let's say, for example, I'm dropping with every movement that I make. If I'm running and I have this constant hip drop, that's going to affect the way the forces impact my knee and also my low back. So I'm just going to run through some quick hip abduction and external rotation strength exercises that you can use as a recovery day for your off day from training, or you can also use these to warm up before you get going with your training. So the very first thing that we're going to start with here is just this side plank clamshell. Now, we're used to a side plank being a core intensive exercise. So for example, if I'm in this side plank position, kind of lined up very well, this is more of a core exercise. If I start to lift one leg, I can feel it start to challenge my hip a little more. Now, if I were to bend my legs and bring my knees in front of the plane of my body and then push my hips up forward as I plank up, I'm going to start to use my glutes to both extend and abduct my leg. So this is going to be our first exercise here. All right, now you saw me lift my leg there. That's a progression. So we'll start here with just this side plank, and I'm starting from this bent knee position. I'm going to push my hip forward. If you're ready for this next step, you can slide that pad out a little bit so that it's just on the edge of my knee. From there, I'm going to keep my right leg lifted, and I'm going to plank up, squeeze, and come back down. Plank up, squeeze, and come back down. So we're starting with just this plank right here. The second progression is to kick out. The third progression is going to be to use a band on your knees. So if I were to this is a standard mini band. It's made by Perform Better. But if I were to use this band on my knees, I then start to engage the top hip as well. And this becomes exponentially harder. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, even though the band is engaging my top hip, it's also making it more challenging on my bottom hip. That's because my bottom hip is pushing against the band to hold it there. If it weren't, it would kind of pop up a little bit. So this becomes a much more challenging exercise here. Now, these exercises can be transitioned into a standing position with any sort of clamshell by coming back against the wall here. So once we start to master that positioning of being on the ground, we want to take this to a standing position. So I'm sitting back into my left hip here, and I'm going to drive my right knee out, and woo, it burns. It's no joke. I'm going to do two more here, then I'm literally going to switch legs because my hip's burning. Good. So then we switch other side here. And we're rotating out again. So I would recommend probably 2 sets of 8 of each of these to start. And we're just going to alternate back and forth, driving that knee out. And one thing that's great about band work is that the stabilizing leg has to work almost just as hard as the moving leg. So we can pair that with a Minivan Walk. It's a pretty standard exercise that you're going to see in the Awaken Training series and in a lot of places. So I would use the Minivan Walk as something to alternate with the standing clamshell. So we've covered some abduction and kind of clamshell type of motions. The next thing we want to cover is extension. So with this, it's very basic. We're just going to kick back. Now let's start with the hold here. One of the things that I'm paying attention to is trying to not arch my back too much. So I'm trying to kind of keep the ribs down a little bit and maintain a good posture. And just kick back. I have my hand here to feel my glutes working. And again, my left leg's working hard as well. Now, if you can, try to work on your balance here too. If this type of glute activation is appealing to you because of low back pain or hip weakness that you think might be related to back pain, you want to make sure you're not using your back to extend here. So, not here, but here. All right, so the next exercise we're going to do is a crossbody single leg deadlift. And I've used this for hip flexors and pushing up here, except this time, because we're using our hip abductors, we're going to push out to the side. So we're going to have the hip drop at the beginning where I'm reaching across my body. And then I'm up here, pushing out to the side. Hip drop, reaching across. So on this hip drop, I want to see the moving leg drop lower. That's going to make that glute work harder, load into the hip, and then drive up and out. And by now, you should have a good little burn going on your glutes. So those right there are just a few exercises that you can kind of put together as a hip recovery or hip strengthening series. And I suggest that you do those on a recovery day, again, if you feel like that's a weak point for you, or just on a warm-up for another lift. Thanks for watching. Dr. Teddy Wilsey.